Hi, I'm Becca with Sing Free Vocal Yoga. Welcome to my channel. So this is the second video in my mindfulness musicianship series in which we explore reading music and working towards sight reading with the intention to stay in the moment, to practice curiosity rather than judgment, and to not go for perfection, but to just keep exploring. Okay, so last video, if you haven't watched the first video in this series, please do so. The link is below in the description. And last video, just to review, we covered treble clef and bass clef on the grand staff. And we talked about how these are just fancy symbols indicating where on the staff are certain notes, and the notes have letter names. Going until G, and then it starts over again at A. And so the treble clef is like a fancy letter G swirling around this line, which when we put a note on that line, that is our note G. And then same thing in bass clef land, we have a fancy letter F, and when a note is on this line, it is an F. All right, so moving on from there, we also talked about the relationship between two notes a little bit, and we're going to go farther with that today. So when we talk about stepping or skipping, last time we learned that notes can be on lines or spaces, and when it goes from a line to the very next space, that is a step. But let's get even more specific. What kind of step is that? And let's compare these two notes and the relationship between them with these two notes. Okay, and the different kinds of steps that these are. So when you go from G to A, here are the notes on the keyboard. G, A. Okay, they're two white notes. And what you will discover is that there is a black note in between them. So even though it's stepping up, there is still a note that could be between those two notes. Okay, so G, A, stepping up, but you can go da, da, da. You can find that note in between. So when you go, conversely, when you go from B to C, here are those notes on the keyboard, B and C. There's no black note in between. Can you tell? It's just those two notes. There's nothing in between. So that is called a half step. Da, da. So try singing it. Try to squeeze another note in between. It's hard to do. But when you try to squeeze another note in between G and A, da, 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 if you kind of slide, you can find that note in between. So different kinds of steps. This is called a whole step, and this is a half step. Whole steps are made up of two half steps squished together. Okay, so in other words, that note that's in between G and A is a G, it has a name, it's called a G sharp. And so this brings us to our next topic of sharps and flats. So here's a G, then here is a G sharp. It lives on that same line as the G, but the sharp makes it one half step higher. That's always what a sharp does. I know it looks like a hashtag. It's a sharp. And if you conversely have a B and then you want to go a half step down, then you use this symbol. Kind of looks like a little squished little B. And you put that to the left of your note that you want to lower, and it lowers it one half step. Okay, so now we know about whole steps and half steps, sharps and flats, and that opens us up to a whole range of possibilities. So next thing, what is a scale? I'm going to write a scale here. A scale is simply when you're stepping rather than skipping in any number of different patterns of half steps and whole steps. So let's just start a scale on C. I have my reasons. And we're going to just keep stepping up, line, space, line, space, line, space. This is what a scale looks like, except the notes don't usually get smaller, but that's what the scale looks like. And it's simply a pattern of half steps and whole steps. And there are different kinds of scales, but the scale that we are more often, we're just used to hearing more, is the major scale. Now, if you start stepping up from C, then you automatically, you're using all the white notes of the keyboard. Here's middle C, right in the middle of the keyboard. And here's what it looks like on the staff. Okay, there's middle C. It gets its own special line, ledger line below the treble clef, in between treble clef and bass clef, and middle C right in the middle of the keyboard. And you start stepping up on just the white notes. Then you will discover the pattern of half steps and whole steps. So let's do this together. We're going to sing do, re, mi's, and if this is the first time hearing do, re, mi's, wow, exciting. If not, then just go with me. Let's just figure it out together. Do. Here, let's look at the notes. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Now the reason I'm choosing do, re, mi's instead of C, D, E's is because do, re, mi's can be applied to any note. So any note can be do. This is the only middle C, but any note can be do, and so that means that we're learning the pattern of whole and half steps here in C major. It's pretty much the easiest scale to start with, but then it can be applied, these concepts can be applied to starting on any of the 12 pitches, black or white notes on the keyboard or piano. I do recommend having some sort of keyboard or piano to work with, even if it's just something like this, just so you can start to visualize and see where those half and whole steps are. So let's do the scale again. Now we know what it looks like on the staff, but now let's do it on the keyboard. And I want you to watch and see where the half steps are. There's only 2 of them. That's your hint. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And when you practice, do go down as well. But for the sake of time, let's just review. Where were those half steps? In other words, where is there no other note in between those 2 notes? Okay, that's right. There's a spot right there. There's no black note in between E and F. So between mi and fa, there is always a half step in the major scale. And then we keep going up, and here's that other spot. Between B and C, half step there. No black note in between, right? So that's a good reminder if you ever forget the pattern of whole and half steps, which I'm going to just write it here for you. W means whole, and H means half. Okay, that's our pattern of whole and half steps in the major scale. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And it sounds like this. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Let's go ahead and sing on the way down too. Do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Okay, so we've learned a lot today. Half steps and whole steps. I like to use this little indicator sometimes that there's my half step, and here's another one between mi and fa, ti and do. And then what you could do is you could start a scale, let's say on A flat. Here's an A flat, It's a black note, and we can still do the pattern. We can slowly figure out, well, I have to go a whole step up first, another whole step, and you just stick to that pattern. Okay, so half steps, whole steps, sharps and flats, and the pattern of whole and half steps in the major scale. Do practice that scale singing up and down. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, until it's that easy going backwards. And let's save meter and rhythm for the next video. This was already a lot. Okay, so thank you again for watching. I hope that was helpful. And please do like and subscribe and share if you feel called to do so. Hit that bell for notifications for when the next video comes out. Thank you again. Take care.